Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the sweeping Trump administration actions from the last week of July 2026, and we're going to detail exactly how they impact your wallet, your healthcare, and your civil rights. The goal here is to cut right through the noise. We're going beyond the official press releases to figure out what these actions actually do in the real world, who really benefits, who ends up paying, and what kinds of incentives they create for working families. So let's jump right in. In just one single week, a temporary tariff expired and was instantly replaced, a war paused and then widened, and a Medicare subsidy was scheduled to disappear. The absolute governing theme across the administration right now is what we can call rapid replacement. It's essentially a strategy where the moment one administrative mechanism gets blocked, fails, or expires, a brand new one is immediately deployed, usually way before the public or even Congress has a chance to fully process the consequences or understand the risks. To make sense of all this, here is our agenda. We are going to cover 1. The strategy of substitution, 2. Economic security and the new tariff wall, 3. National security regarding the Iran conflict, 4. Healthcare security and shifting Medicare risks, 5. Civil rights in the courts, and 6. A hidden administrative pipeline dealing with immigration data. Section 1. The strategy of substitution, a whirlwind week of executive maneuvers. Take a look at how these actions literally stacked right on top of each other between July 24th and July 30th. In a span of just 6 days, massive shifts in financial and legal realities happened virtually overnight. It's incredibly difficult to track how a court injunction on voting rights overlaps with military action in the Middle East and a major Medicare announcement, but when you look closer, they are completely connected by the administration's aggressive, rapid-fire use of executive authority. Moving to Section 2. Economic security, replacing the tariff wall. And the big question here is, who really pays for these trade policies? At exactly 1 minute past midnight on July 24th, a sweeping set of emergency tariffs expired because they'd been previously invalidated by the Supreme Court. But that tariff wall didn't just disappear. The administration simply swapped out the legal foundation underneath it. They instantly replaced those invalidated tariffs with brand new Section 301 tariffs, which range from 10 to 12.5% across 60 different economies. The new legal justification? They are alleging that foreign governments failed to police imports produced with forced labor. By using Section 301, they're grabbing a much stronger legal vehicle that actually permits trade retaliation, totally sidestepping the emergency powers law the courts had just struck down. Now, when we look past the stated goal of policing global labor practices, we have to face the structural reality of who actually foots the bill here. The U.S. Treasury benefits, for sure, along with protected domestic producers. But who pays? Initially, the importers take the hit, but the reality of global economics means those costs don't stop there. They're rapidly passed on to downstream manufacturers and ultimately directly to working-class consumers. Critics point out that this broad, countrywide design acts a lot less like a targeted human rights tool and a lot more like a pretextual consumer tax on everyday goods. Section 3. National security. Escalating the Iran conflict. Let's look at the economic ripple effects of military action. We see this exact same substitution logic in national security. Watch how this sequence builds. On July 28th, Iran launches ballistic missiles toward U.S. forces, which are intercepted. In an immediate response, the U.S. and Saudis strike militia sites in Iraq. But then, on July 29th, the U.S. escalates significantly, launching a heavy 2-hour strike wave deep inside Iran, hitting command, missile, and maritime infrastructure. This is a massive operational escalation. It totally reverses a short strike pause announced by the president just a few days earlier, moving far beyond mere force protection. And crucially, this was executed without specific congressional authorization. The administration is claiming self-defense, while critics argue that prolonged hostilities legally require Congress to weigh in. So, how does an overseas conflict impact regular households? $88.09. That was the price of a barrel of Brent crude oil on July 29th. The immediate second-order effect of those strikes inside Iran was a sudden 7.3% spike in global oil prices. Whenever military action threatens maritime traffic in the Middle East, that immediate financial risk is passed straight to regular Americans at the gas pump and through higher domestic freight costs for basic everyday goods. Section 4. Healthcare security. Shifting Medicare risks. This focuses on the ending of Part D premium stabilization. $9.8 billion That represents the estimated federal cost for the Medicare Part D premium stabilization demonstration over 2025 and 2026. This was a taxpayer-financed subsidy designed to lower premiums for participating standalone prescription drug plans. But on July 28th, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced they are abruptly ending this program in December 2026, rather than running it through 2027 like the Government Accountability Office had originally planned. This perfectly illustrates the core theme of rapid replacement and shifted risk. By ending the demonstration early, the government avoids giving extra subsidies to insurers, which absolutely saves federal dollars. But that risk doesn't just evaporate, it lands squarely on the shoulders of seniors. Because this program is ending, standalone Part D enrollees are now facing a landscape of entirely unknown and very likely higher premiums for 2027. This means seniors are going to have to navigate complex plan switching and face potential disruptions to the actual medications their lives depend on. And here's the kicker. The actual plan-specific prices won't even be revealed until September, leaving millions of working families completely in the dark until just weeks before an election. Section 5, Rights and Rulings. Courts constrain executive action. We're examining the judicial pushback on detention and voting rights. While the executive branch was pushing aggressively on trade and healthcare, federal courts spent the week putting some strict constraints on the administration. On July 30th, the Ninth Circuit handed down this ruling. The administration had been trying to deny bond hearings to a massive population of immigrants detained in the U.S. interior, which was a huge departure from nearly 30 years of standard practice. The court outright rejected this categorical no-bond detention. On a human level, this is incredibly significant. It doesn't guarantee automatic release, but it successfully returns a vital legal lifeline. It gives families and employers a fighting chance to preserve their income and caregiving situations while their cases proceed, rather than facing mandatory, indefinite lockup. We saw that same kind of judicial friction in the First Circuit regarding voting rights. On July 25th, the court kept parts of Executive Order 1439 blocked across 23 states and Washington, D.C. The administration's stated goal is to use federal lists to improve citizenship verification for mail-in ballots. But the states have been sounding a massive alarm over this. They are warning that inserting these late, federally mandated operational changes risks widespread disenfranchisement. Basically, an incomplete federal list could accidentally prevent eligible legal voters from receiving their ballots, which would disproportionately strip the constitutional rights of disabled, elderly, rural, and shift-working Americans. Finally, Section 6. The undercovered pipeline, hidden immigration data. This is what happens when child welfare systems become enforcement tools. We have to talk about this deeply undercovered story that perfectly captures how invisible administrative changes create massive unintended human consequences. 460,000. On July 28th, it was quantified that since January 2025, the Office of Refugee Resettlement supplied ICE with more than 460,000 investigative leads. These leads involved unaccompanied children, their sponsors, and their household members, and they directly contributed to over 12,000 arrests. The administration argues that this kind of data sharing is necessary to locate children who are placed with unsafe or unvetted sponsors. But you have to consider the devastating second-order effects here. When child welfare data is routinely shared with ICE to conduct arrests, a brutal causality loop is born. Relatives get terrified of deportation, so they actively avoid coming forward to claim their kids. And the direct result? The average time a child spends stuck in government custody has skyrocketed to 194 days. The government has effectively transformed a child welfare system into a trap, ballooning custody times simply because the system meant to protect kids is now operating as an enforcement pipeline. And this brings us to the ultimate takeaway for the week. The governing pattern here is rapid replacement. When a tariff is struck down, a new one is built literally overnight. When a conflict pauses, it widens just days later. When a healthcare subsidy ends, the real cost is hidden from the public until the absolute last minute. This strategy systematically shifts massive financial, legal, and physical risks away from the federal government and dumps them directly onto the shoulders of regular working-class households. When policies are deployed this quickly and the real-world consequences are obscured in the chaos, it leaves us with one glaring realization about who ends up fundamentally unprotected. Thank you for joining this explainer.